In today's adventure, we're going to test the Pico adapter that the Gobstopper made in the last video. If you didn't see that, be sure to go check it out. Enjoy!
Thanks for the intro, little buddy. Well, first things first, we're going to get this older or smaller wattage power supply out. We're going to put the 1200 watt on the 240 and 900 watt on the standard 110 PSU in. We're going to get everything hooked back up, get the Pico board hooked back up, get all the wiring back done. So for those of you guys who are just tuning in who haven't been following the series, what we've done so far is we had a mining rig that went down due to a power outage, and we created our own Pico adapter cable to go into this 8-pin CPU motherboard. So now that we have created said cable that I'm installing here, we are going to test it out, and hopefully, fingers crossed, we do not have any smoke, we don't blow anything up. This is the first time that I have made my own cable, especially of this sorts. However, I used a lot of resources researching on Reddit, the manufacturer of the Pico board and the manufacturer of the motherboard, making sure that I connected the wires properly, or connected the proper wires to the proper wires. So I'm pretty confident that it's going to work. About 99% sure, but that 1% is a little nervous. So we will see. We will see here. So if you didn't catch those other videos on how we got to this point, go check those out. Some interesting stuff. Teach you how to make some cables, how to make a mining rig out of a server case. So now that we have everything put back in here, but minus the GPU, we're gonna take this over to the display, hook up the GPU, see what we get. Alright, so we are back over here with the rig and our display. We have fixed the cable that was burnt, we hope. Created a new adapter here, have it all hooked up, so we are going to plug it in and see if this thing fires up. Alright, so get that plugged in. A little nervous. We'll see what happens. Oh, let's not knock that around too much, because I just got that setting up there. Give it a little power flick. Let's see what happens. So now that we have verified that the custom Pico board adapter cable that we made works, we can go ahead and move on to the next step. And some of you guys may be watching this and asking yourself, is he getting a display from a GPU sitting on a riser? And the answer is yes. I do have another video that I talk about where we found that yes, you can get a display produced. So it's just a little info for you. So we're going to go ahead and move on to the next step, and we're going to update the BIOS so we can get this mining rig back up and running.
Alright, so I'm going to go to the MSI website, download it. Then what we are going to do is extract it to a USB thumb drive, then eject it. So once we have the flash drive saved, then we're going to go to the mining rig. Alright, so we got our flash drive plugged in. Now we're going to come to the front. Oh, actually no, we're not. First we're going to turn the rig on. Well, I didn't want an operating system found. So we're going to take the flash drive out, and then we're going to power it back on. This time it should boot into the BIOS. Perfect. Because we need to make some changes in here. We're going to go to advanced. First we're going to go into MFlash. So now we're gonna plug in our USB.
So once the MFlash loader firmware boots up, you're going to insert the flash drive, then you're going to select the file that you just put on the flash drive, and then you're going to click update. Then from there, the motherboard is going to read the file, extract it, and update the firmware on your motherboard. I do want to mention that this video is not sped up. The amount of time that it actually takes for this process of updating your BIOS really all depends on your processor. So the faster processor you have, the faster this process will be. The slower the processor you have, the slower this process will be. So with that being said, I want to say that this is the Ryzen 5 I'll throw all of the info on that down in the description. So this one, not the fastest processor in the world. You know, it's no Threadripper or anything, but it is pretty decently fast. So it'll knock this out in a couple minutes. Then from there, we are going to log back in to the BIOS and make some changes. So that way we can get everything set up for the actual mining. There are some changes that have to be done within the BIOS, and I like to update this first. Then we go into the BIOS and make the changes, just in case anything were to get deleted. And I do apologize for the quality. I did not account for, while recording this, I did not account for the amount of backlight that would be produced by the actual display. So I do understand that some of these things are going to be a little difficult to read. If you do have this motherboard, you'll be able to somewhat figure out what I'm clicking. I do understand, like I said, that it will be hard to read, but if you do have this motherboard and you are setting it up for mining, it will be somewhat easy to understand what I'm clicking here. In this section, I'm disabling all of the boot devices except the USB flash drive that I'm going to have HiveOS boot from. Be sure to also select the legacy UEFI post method, and then I also have the post beep enabled because I have a buzzer. And yes, you did hear me correctly, I do have all of my rigs booting from a flash drive, and the reason for that is I didn't have enough space on the inside because I wanted to use an extra card rather than using a solid state drive. Just made more sense. I've heard it's not as stable, but once you get a good install on it, I've actually had more issues with SSD running HiveOS than a USB drive. So there's that. Everybody said it would be the other way around, but I don't know. Maybe I've just had really good luck. I don't know. I haven't had many issues at all, actually. Running HiveOS from a USB drive. It's actually worked quite great. If I ever need to update it, or you know, the file becomes corrupt, I don't have to take it all the way out and hook it up to some form of USB SSD cable in order to update the SSD. With a USB, it's super easy, you know. Every computer has a USB now, so I can plug it in my laptop, reformat the drive, and we're ready to rock again. So I like the USB route. So now I'm just going through and turning off some of the other settings here. I'm disabling power save and power protection. Really the most important setting if you're setting up a mining rig typically is your boot settings. You want to make sure that you select UEFI on the post method, as well as enabling 4G decoding. Everything else aside from that is really, for the most part, kind of preference, or performance preference rather. From my experience, those have really been the most important settings. And I do have some other videos on the channel about updating BIOS, or the BIOS of different motherboards. But if you guys want a more in-depth video on the actual updating of the BIOS, let me know. Or the settings that I use in my BIOS. Throw it down in the comments. Once we get all the other settings done, what I typically do is I go through and look at the fan settings. I've actually tried different things with the fan settings. Sometimes I put them on all auto. Sometimes I put them on the consistent of just wide open all the time. I would probably recommend, just from an air movement standpoint, whenever the rig's on, have the fans running wide open, rather than putting the auto on, because I have a belief that it would have to tie up some resources in your CPU for it to register with, for it to keep track of at what stage it's going to kick the fan on, to what percentage level and all of that. Just leave it on a constant, and the CPU theoretically shouldn't work on that at all, and should free up more resources for the CPU to mine, because I do use my CPUs for CPU mining as well. So everything in the server case is used for mining. It's all working towards one goal, and that's to mine. It's typically not on the same currencies, right? Like you can't, some cryptos you can mine both GPU and CPU. However, that's not the case with all of them. So now it's at, do I want to confirm all of these changes? And so I'm just looking through and making sure that I see some of the more important ones. I want to make sure that I see the fan speeds were changed, that the 4G decoding was enabled. So we'll save it, and now we can officially boot up in the Hive OS. It's ready to rock, ready to have all the cards installed. But one thing that I like to do, and this is just after it saves, typically is to boot it back up and look back and make sure that the settings that I click save actually saved. So now that we have tested and verified the Pico adapter cable that we made works, we have updated the BIOS on the motherboard. So now the next step is to add all of these cards back into the rig here. I'm going to add them exactly the same way that they were already in the rig. So that way when I connect it to Hive OS, it will boot up without an issue. And I don't have to add the cards individually, I can just boot it up. If you found this video helpful, interesting, educational, be sure to like, comment, subscribe. It really helps the YouTube algorithm. Thanks for watching this episode of the Gobstopping Adventures.